Yeah. Good evening, committee. Welcome to councillor staff and guests for the meeting itself, and welcome to the residents viewing the meeting live on YouTube. The meeting is being streamed live to YouTube in its entirety, and I'll have you to bear that in mind when going through the meeting. Before we get to the agenda, I've just got this pre-election period note to read. It goes. The period covers. I'd like to address councillors, officers, and members of the public on current restrictions in place regarding the pre-election period, or PERD as it was once known. The period covers 6 weeks before an election and restricts what a council may or may not do, and I urge you all to be mindful of this. As chair of this committee, part of my role is to ensure the requirements of this period are met, and I will be doing that tonight. I ask you to support me in that. In this period, council, which includes this meeting, must ensure that its communications and resources are not used to attempt to influence the outcome of an election. As such, councillors, officers and the public should refrain from any statements or discussions tonight which could be seen as promoting a particular candidate or a political view, or publicising politically controversial or divisive matters. This meeting exists to make decisions on the matters presented on the agenda, and as such, please limit your discussions to these topics. Councillors are reminded that failure to adhere to the government code of practice concerning these matters would be a breach of the code of conduct and would be reportable to the monitoring officer at Dorset Council. Thank you in advance for your cooperation. So, on to the meeting. Welcome, committee. We've got a fairly light agenda going into Christmas, but we've got a couple of key things to go through. I'm going to go straight to the agenda and talk about apologies and absences and substitutions. So, Nikki, who do we have?
We have apologies from Councillor Hope, who is substituted by Councillor Northam, and apologies from Councillor Huckle, who is substituted by Councillor Frost.
Welcome, both of you. Can we just, can I have a proposer for that and second that? Proposal by Councillor Wakely, seconded by Councillor Dickinson. All those in favour? I think item 3 is declarations of interest. Do we have any? Thank you. Item 4 is the minutes of the last meeting. The recommendation is that members agree the minutes of the last meeting held on the 15th of November.
I'll propose that, Chairman.
Any amendments first? Very happy for me to sign? Okay. Proposed by Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor Watley. All those in favour?
Nine.
All those against? Any abstentions? 4. Thank you. Item 5 is councillor questions. Do we have any?
None have been pre-notified.
No pre-notified. I'll take any questions that are not covered on the agenda. I'll take now if anybody's got any. Any questions? No questions. Okay, we'll pick those any further ones up during the agenda. Item 6 is public questions. Do you have any pre-notified? Councillor, are you here for the tumble down item rather than any? Yes. Okay, item 7 into the first substantive item on the agenda is the draft budget and precept, and I'm going to ask Deputy Town Clerk to introduce.
Thank you, Chair. I will keep this at quite a high level just to start with, and then obviously if we get into any detail to go on, then I'm more than happy to go into some, answer any questions which members may have. But this is the draft budget and a recommended precept, which has been recommended by the Budget Working Group. The Budget Working Group prepared the budget based on a 0% increase in the council tax. So when we looked at the base budget as a start of 10, where we incorporate all of those increases which we have to do, such as the pay award and contract inflation, then that meant an increase in the precept of £125,000. The budget working group have worked to reduce that so that, as I said earlier, the increase is zero. That has been helped by an increase in the tax base, which has helped mitigate some of those increases. Built into the budget is a pay award for next year of 5%, which I believe is reasonable, particularly if any members have heard the inflation figures for today is now below 4%. We were helped by being prudent last year with the pay award, which meant that we didn't have to find any additional funds to fund the pay award, which was awarded in 2023-24. And that was a good thing for us, where many councils came a bit unstuck and they were having to find additional funds. So I will hand back, Chair, to you for now, because of the budget work we've been able to start the conversations, but happy to take any detailed questions as we go through it.
Thank you, Ian. So committee, before I open up for general comments or questions, I'm going to ask if any of the budget working group want to speak on the item first, because they did most of the work. I would say for myself that having been involved in these for the 4 years we've sat them, that this one feels a bit as scientific as you can get, because we've got a lot more knowledge of budgets and information, and sort of every single rock I think has been overturned. So I'll hand over to either Councillor Nickinson first, Councillor Watley and Councillor Hamilton, who we had 3 sets of meetings, so the work has been done. Councillor Nickinson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, as part of that committee, I would have to say that we spent 3 fairly substantial meetings on this. We went through in a lot of detail. I think there was a general consensus around this, that the budget that we've brought forward to you can be agreed. I think it's a fair estimate of where we are. I think there was a feeling, or certainly from my point of view, that where we are now is the right place to be. With a view, I think that the new council, having been the council in place for 4 years now, we've got some better understanding of the way things run. Probably it would be the view of the new council to have a strategic review of where we are, what the income streams are, what the availability of those are, what the costs are going forward in the next year, to have a sort of more strategic review of the whole thing. But I from my point of view, I would very much support this budget, and I hope other members will be able to do that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Nickinson. Councillor Watley.
I wouldn't really add too much more than Councillor Nixon, but I did find that the staff which we interviewed along with the budget were very much more knowledgeable, and I think we came to an agreeable solution, a budget which can be kept to, and look forward to the next year. That's really all I need to say.
Thank you, Councillor Watley. Councillor Hamilton, any final thoughts for us? I should say that Councillor Hamilton's role in the budget working group was to be the conscience of the group, and a good job she did as well.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have a great deal more to add. I would point out the sustained effort that Councillor Gray put in leading this throughout the period of this council, and as Councillor Nickinson has said, and Councillor Watley, the council officers on this round of talks were really proactive, really constructive. It's an extraordinary statement that we've got 0 increase over the lifetime of the council. I think Deputy Chief Clerk advises that's very rare, very rare. And I'm really pleased to see that council continues to be a living wage employer. I think there are challenges ahead. We know we're holding posts vacant. And it is difficult to predict income. But I really commend these proposals to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Alton. Yes, extraordinary numbers, and I think the thing I wanted to achieve in the budget working group and proposing to you guys was the next iteration of the council needs to have a stable base to work on. Unlike in 2019 when we all came in, there's a very stable financial framework in place with funds available to service the strategy, I think. And a structure now where we can go forward. I think Councillor Nicholson is right. I think the next council does need a strategic position on some things, but they have the ability to do that within the financial framework. So I just quickly worked out the inflation rate compound from 2019 up to this month, including the 3.9, I think it was announced today, and it's 24%. So that's an extraordinary. The one thing I wanted to clarify, I don't think we're carrying any vacancies. I think we've fulfilled the structure. And finally, before I open it up to everybody, I would say that the officers that came along, a bit like Councillor Wally said, not only were they knowledgeable, but we were able to service there, and some of them came along and asked for increases. And we were able to service all of those requests within this 0%, which was an extraordinary thing, most enjoyable. Anyway, I'll take questions if anybody's got them. Councillor Norman.
Thank you, Chair. Well, went off again. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I noticed somewhere in the report there was a reference to the Dorset Council Local Council Tax Reduction Scheme. I take it that that applies for the total amount that people might pay, and I wondered whether there was any knowledge within Weymouth Town Council of what the take-up might be from Weymouth residents on that scheme.
Yes, the council tax reduction thing came through cabinet a couple of weeks ago, and the rules were changed so that hard pressed families could apply up to 100% now rather than 90. I did ask the question about what the split was per region, but they didn't have it. So I don't know whether the town council has it, but certainly they couldn't furnish me with those numbers at the time. I suppose we could ask that, you know, what percentage of the population, I don't know. As to whether it applies to us, I'll leave that to the town clerk to answer technically.
We should be able to get that information on request. There's a form which is called the Council Tax Base 1 form, which outlines how the calculation for the tax base, and it takes into account all of the reductions and adjustments under that capital tax reduction scheme. It's important because it reduces the tax base. In the old council tax benefit days, it didn't affect the tax base, but the new scheme does. But if you would like some information, you can certainly go back to talk to the council and see if we can obtain that.
I would like to know what take-up is, because somewhere or other I either heard or read that there'd been a lower take-up than anticipated. And I wondered about that, and I think it's very important mentioning it in today's meeting that people are fully aware of it. Yes. I bet there are people who aren't.
The calculation for council tax is included in our preset working out, isn't it? So we benefit from that. We don't know where it is, so we'll find out for you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Questions on the budget? After Wally.
Do you need a proposer?
If there are no more questions, I'll sort of anticipate a lot of questions. Are you wanting to propose?
Quite happy.
Okay, I'll hold that thought, just check anybody else.
I'll second.
Okay. 17 minutes past 7. So we have a budget proposal, and you're working off of 2 proposals, just to remind you. The recommendation is approval and recommendation for council of proposed budget, so that's the total budget, and approval recommendation for 3 September, obviously that's ex-any income, to council on the 10th of January. I've got a proposal from councillor Watley, seconded by councillor Nickinson. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Committee. Item 8 on the agenda is Tumbledown. I'm going to introduce Ben Heath, project manager, to introduce it. I think Alan. Evening, Alan. Alan Chambers, for those who don't know, is the manager at Tumbledown, and everybody knows Councillor Morell. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report, the purpose of it is to set out the Tumbledown future delivery focus so that councillors have a clear understanding of how Tumbledown operates and what it will achieve. So I won't read the whole report, but just picking out a few key things. Tumbledown has obviously developed over the last 3 years into a valuable community asset that works with many parts of the community and delivers huge amounts of social value. Lots of the participants have vulnerable sort of backgrounds or need additional support, and it's a place where they can get that target support to create lots of opportunities to get lots of really positive outcomes for themselves and quite often the organisations and groups that bring them. The appendix to the report also sets out a number of sort of case studies and other social benefits that Tumbledown has achieved over those 3 years and continues to build on. Another key thing linked to the actual participants is how a lot of the work is done. And the report details lots of volunteer hours, which make up the majority of the manpower and the hours that actually go into maintaining the site and delivering the activities for lots of vulnerable groups that attend. Another key thing that the site is enabled that the whole of the 27 acres to do is looking at the climate change agenda as well, and also increasing the biodiversity of the site and obviously the flora and fauna that reside there. Tumbledown is looked at as a very long-term project that will develop and grow annually and steadily, both with participants, volunteers, and the wider site itself. This will enable both social value to be experienced by many vulnerable members of the society, and as a long-term project will also attract future capital investment for the other buildings and wider things that the site might do, looking at the master plan that was put forward to the planning. One area that hasn't worked out quite as anticipated from the start of the project would be the income figures. There's lots of assumptions and things that were put into practice at the start and built on with a business case. Unfortunately, lots of those assumptions haven't quite worked out as anticipated, where a lot of the income was hoped to be generated. But alongside that, the social value has continued to be built in and delivered, regardless of whether that income was there or not. And that is still a really strong and driving force behind Tumbledown itself. One of the keys to attracting more participants, and which will add to the increase in the income steadily, is by getting building A, which is one of the new buildings which will hopefully be in place next year, and will link to the seal request, which is the next item on the agenda. The building will also give Tumbledown a more professional feel. So as well as the new facilities, which will enable classrooms, a small teaching kitchen and permanent toilets, which, although that sounds modest, at the minute is relying on 2 portaloos, which for many of organisations and vulnerable people trying to attend, they can't use that part of the facility. So up till now, haven't been able to come, but have stated when those facilities are in place, they would be really welcoming to come and have the opportunity as well. This is why the primary focus of Tumbledown shouldn't be about providing high income based on the resource that we can put into it, but it should be targeted at providing the social value incomes and maximising any income streams that we can develop through that targeted activity. But putting unrealistic income targets in place, it's not set up to do that, so it sort of shoots ourselves in the foot. With that in mind, and the budget that's obviously just been approved, which was put forward within the tumble down element, as I say, the focus should be firmly around building that social value and maximising modest incomes where possible. And officers will obviously continue to do that wherever that might be possible. As well as income targets, we'll also apply for grants similar to the ones that we've just generated income to hopefully make building a possibility in 2024. A key that will add to building aid is also the potential that council has to relocate the council's nursery to the site as well. This will not only provide additional facilities, which again can be used to run the nursery, but also to add to tumble downs activities that can be run on site. It will also ensure that green staff spaces staff will also be on site regularly and widen that transition to tumble down, eventually being part of the whole green spaces operation. This is really important in terms of the tumble down should be treated in line with other community assets that council provides that also provide social value benefits. Any other park, garden and green space operated by the council does not have high income generation targets, but obviously delivers social value benefits. And tumble down shouldn't be seen as any different. But as I've said previously, officers will look to maximise any opportunities where income can be made and developed. So just to sum that up, it's clear that tumble down is a great asset that is well placed and can deliver and develop lots of opportunities for all manner of people within our communities, but specifically looking at vulnerable communities as well, that can gain high value social value rewards, and that the council should use that as the focus in its long-term development of that site, rather than seeing it as a income generation target first, social value second. So just to sum up, the recommendation from the report is that the committee agree that the primary focus for tumble down should be centred around delivering social value outcomes to the community in our town.
It goes on a little bit. We missed out the last 5 sentences.
Sorry, writing this down.
Through the chair, please.
Sorry, Chair, there was an additional 5 words.
Oh, and more realistic income targets.
Thank
Sorry.
Oh, thank God you got that, David.
Thank you, Ben. Well written report. I asked for this report to be written because I think that going into the next council needs to be clear about what tumble down is and isn't. And I think the point that I would add that was in the report that you didn't emphasise is of the 100 or so volunteers that do the work, if they weren't there, because it's an asset, we'd have to do the work, which would cost us money. So I suppose you've written so that everybody's really clear. We'll stop the questions about, yes, we've had an ambition when we set out, but 3 years down the line, feels like we know a lot more. The social value is growing. So Ben's written the report. I've got a question for the officers at the end, but I'll take any questions from the committee now. Councillor Legg.
Am I having trouble with? Oh, it's working now. Good, thank you. I have a little mild concern, so don't get too worried about this question about this sort of social value first. To me, as a Dorset councillor, that is the responsibility of Dorset Council. And whilst I recognise the similarity of doing parks and gardens, I just wonder if we're not actually taking on some of their responsibility and providing the type of facilities available that they should really be funding. And the second question, if I can ask the second one at the same time, is I read in there about the fact that some of the groups that come to you are not paying contributions to you, which you had originally expected. And I'm not too surprised, because I think maybe you were optimistic and without too much previous experience to judge what you're going to get. But I am a little bit concerned about some groups who did pay have left. Would you like to comment on that?
Yes, Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, thank you for the questions. Yeah, so in terms of the Dorset Council social sort of responsibility, I agree with that. And we are working with and trying to target Dorset Council wherever we can to open those conversations. Some of it is around how some of those more vulnerable people are funded. So it's not as straight a conversation as it might seem. But we are with Alan trying to unpick that and work out how and where we can get that to happen. But I agree that there needs to be some other elements of that sort of funding coming in, totally. And with some of the groups that aren't paying, I think that will need to be continued and pressed where we can. And I think there are mechanisms, and it might not be a straight funding opportunity to come. It might be more of a partnership working element, so that there's sort of not just a straight how much per visit. It might be a bit wider than that, but with some element of that coming in, and we've already targeted some groups and organisations we think that might be possible with in some shape or form. So it's around some groups can't, or at the minute can't pay. But as we come back to the manpower and the types of groups coming, do we just say, well, we're going to stop them coming because they can't pay, and this group can pay so they can come? It doesn't quite pan out quite as simply as that, I don't think. So we're looking for as many mechanisms as we can as we build the model moving forward. I think adding to that, building A might help that conversation once there's permanent toilets and a wider set of facilities, and both some, where there's poor weather, some indoor activities that can be done to link with the outdoor activities that will help that as well. So people see that there's a sort of wider offer, I guess, that they might be able to buy into.
And the groups that did pay that have moved on?
Which groups in terms of growth space?
Report, that was all. You mentioned it in here somewhere, but it's done.
Oh, yeah, so that group, that was again, just it shows how sort of volatile, I guess, that social services type funding is, and that there's no guarantee that even if you've got some people coming there, they'll stay forever. And there's lots of opportunities that can come up. So, but equally, people that are going somewhere else now may choose to come to Tundown in the future as well and pay to do so. So like I say, it's not quite as black and white as they're paying one minute and not the next. It's a little bit more complex.
Which is why strategically partnership agreements is the way to go, because it solidifies that the financial commitment along with what you're entitled to. And once you've got hot facilities that'll work, I sort of tend to agree. A question I had on going from Councillor Legg was, do we know why the people come to us? For free, obviously, but they come to us. Are they not being serviced by Dorset Council? Because that's the other way to look at it. Why do they come to us? I think Alan might have some knowledge.
Yes, so, what do you guys think?
I gave up.
Thank you. So there's a gap really between the people that are funded by Dorset Council and the people that suit what we do, trying to do best. So people who are not physically very challenged, and people who don't need lots of one-to-one care, basically come to the end of their school or college life. And then quite often there's nothing for them to do, but they're not in that area where they would attract a personal budget via adult social care, but they won't be able to get jobs because they would find that very difficult. So there's a group of people that come to us that fit in that gap very nicely, but they don't get assessed by social services and then funded by social services.
But I think Dorset Council need to understand what that group is. I mean, I get the fact that when we get the buildings, we'll be more marketable, and Dorset Council is the key to this in terms of future funding. That's where you're going to get most of success, I think. Committee, any of it? Okay, Councillor Harris next.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I totally agree with what's just been said. I think that the lack of buildings at the moment has actually created some of this hiatus of people who come and then decide they can't stay. But more importantly, it's meant that Dorset Council hasn't been able to encourage some of its people that it has got funding for, or gives funding to them and then encourages them to use that funding to come to us. Because we haven't got the resources, the facilities on the site to enable that to actually work as effectively as it should do for that sort of person. So we need the toilets, we need the indoor space, and so let's get on with that as quickly as we can. I think the other point to mention, for those of you that do worry about money, is of course when the nursery moves, it'll save us £26,000 a year, because the rent has just gone up to nursery.
It'll be 30 by the time we move.
So, you know, we're going to be getting that much money saved, and therefore I think that's almost meeting our targets anyway.
Thank you, councillor Harris. Councillor Northern.
Thank you. Oh, wow, good work. So, a few points if I may.
As long as you're.
On the page 8 of the, just wind up back to page 8, something that you didn't mention, Ben, was the community growth spaces. And these are rented quite cheaply by groups, and they can bring people on site a little bit more down. That's it. The logos, please. Thank you. And people rent these, and some of them are using them to run a very similar activity to what's actually going on. They're not actually getting charged that much at this stage. And until we get toilets, I think that's probably reasonable, but the situation may change. It's not just the grow space they get the facility for, they also get the use of the tool shed and the tools that are in it, and the shed where the coffee and tea making facilities are. That's point one. When I go along to Tumbleweed Land, what impresses me most is the inclusivity. Yes, there are vulnerable adults there, vulnerable children, but there's also ordinary people there volunteering. Sometimes you can't tell them apart, and you shouldn't be able to, and they're treated very similarly, and it's a very welcoming atmosphere. So I'm a real fan of this, as you know from previous. One thing I don't think Ben made enough of was securing the 100k of funding. That's an income, and I didn't see it in the accounts as income, but I'm sure it's in there somewhere as income, because it is income. That 100k is a great success. I think when you applied for more money from Dorset Council than they gave you. Perhaps you could just clarify the amount?
So we applied for 25 and we got 15.
Thank you. I'd like to point out that the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, Dorset Council got 4.1 million for dispersing to community projects. And as yet, I think they've only dispersed 17k. So I think there's a real scope for going back to them and asking for more as we get those additional facilities. And I look forward to that in the new year. So that probably wraps me up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, councillor Northern. Councillor Lambert, welcome back from your travels.
Thank you very much, Chair. My comments have rather been taken away from me. First of all, by councillor Harris, because I was going to point out about the toilets, and secondly by what councillor Northern has just said. What I would like to say is to congratulate the team, and we have 3 of them here tonight, because I include councillor Orrell in this, for the tremendous work that has been done and the achievements that have been made there. And of course, the gaining of the grant for the building is an absolute game changer. For certain, I know that we lost people in the early days because of the toilets, and once an opportunity came along whereby they could go somewhere that had got toilets, surprise, surprise, they went there. So that is a real game changer. And as has been said, the sooner that happens, the better. And I think we can welcome in that there will be some income. I think that the change in direction in which we view Tumbledown is extremely good. For many reasons, as you're all aware, I've been banging on about the importance of open spaces, referring to tumble down and getting the nursery there. These are all things that are being set in train and will be of immense value to the next council group. So I have got a question, but I will say well done, chaps, and chappesses who are not here.
Thank you, councillor Lambert. Councillor Harris.
Just so that anybody who might be watching this also understands, the other element is the green agenda. And the fact that a set of 1,000 trees are going to be planted next year. So we've got 1,000 trees to plant at Tumbledown next year, which will more than mitigate a lot of the things that we generate carbon from by planting those 1,000 trees. So it's got a lot of purposes. Social value, but also the green value that it's presenting us with.
Thank you. Councillor Morell, as you are a guest here, would you like to comment and give you the opportunity to comment on the project itself?
Thanks, I'll try and summarise some of it. Yeah, we did start off with all sorts of ambitions, but in these ways we were kind of twisting the ground. We didn't really know what would work. I had visited other areas where they made the paid attendees part of the project, but it's like planting seeds. You plant lots and only some come up. So there's all sorts of other ideas which haven't worked, but there's others that have. And when we have various people coming to the site, and then we have the choice whether we say you can't come because you're not paid, or one that will help. A bit of frustration, from my point of view, is the NHS, who's got lots of money. And they've got they're social prescribing, every area's got social prescribing, so they're sending lots of people to community places to have help. But you know, I get calls from occupational therapy for you know, as well. Can we take this person? Can we take that person? Oh, by the way, we're not going to pay. So, but we always say yes. We want to help people, and that's where the impetus of this paper comes across. Is that we haven't turned people away, and we've seen it as providing help for some of our most vulnerable and damaged residents. That's so we probably haven't made as much money as we think, but we have helped people. And I hope we get what we know will help even more. So that's kind of where we're at. I think where we'll keep going. The last meeting, it was great to see everyone voting unanimously to make our play areas disabled access. And Tumbledown, we're trying to do the same. I'll set that back. Graham put hundreds of hours work giving us this disabled path from the top car park and bottom, a real labour of love. And we've also got a disabled wheelchair friendly growing spaces which came from a separate grant again, money coming into the council. So some areas are set up for well for wheelchairs, but hopefully as we move on with building aid, toilets will be far more welcoming to our disabled residents. So there we are. It's not quite some things have worked, some things haven't, but we are moving forward, and I think we really are helping to seek your support in this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Anybody else? Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think this is a fantastic piece of work, and thanks definitely to all involved. I want to understand, as Councillor Rose referred to, we spoke about accessibility for our play areas. I want to understand how this scheme is helping us with the work on allotments, because I know many allotments had plots used by a similar profile of users. Is this able to support and share lessons, or are we taking away from that? Because Tumbledown is a little way away for lots of us.
Councillor Rowe, did you want to come back on that question?
It's a good point, and it's something that what we're hopefully doing is filling in a gap in some people have got their own gardens, they could grow their own stuff. fine. Can we not council allotments for the physically able and people who've got a certain amount of confidence? But there's a gap. So some will be able to click with an allotment, but what we're doing is helping people mentally to be able to do it themselves. So we're getting on the land and doing it as a team, helping people to be able to grow. So it's otherwise not able to access the land. In up to now, they've been offering day centres, which are often inside. Not everyone wants to be inside, so some of them give the opportunity to, and has given the opportunity to work outside, supported, helped, encouraged, emotionally stable.
Alan, would you like to come on?
We are also starting to link up with groups from allotments as well to talk about the way that we're not using any chemicals and pesticides and organic inorganic fertilizers, inorganic fertilizers. So this last week I've spoken to the lady who's the secretary of the White Ridges allotments. And they've asked us to do an article for their magazine every month, so I'm going to be doing that once a month. We've also spoken about, can we start to be a kind of hub almost for starting to grow, provide seeds and collect seeds and be able to link together to say these are the kind of things we'll do if we work together to kind of improve the green footprint of allotments as well. So just to try and start, I'm talking about bees and having open events to show what we're doing, because we are doing no dig, we are incorporating a lot of organic material from the council's own resources into the soil there, and we can show people the benefits of that quite clearly. So we'll be inviting people who want to do that as well. So some of the horticultural societies as well have come along to us. Southfield have done a walk around there with us, so we can talk to them about how they're doing different kind of horticulture there as well. So hopefully that will be.
Points from me then as we wrap this up. One is, I think strategically there are two big points in the Cumberland project in the future. One will be when building A is up. I think you should revisit the question, can't pay, won't pay, will pay, because that's a really tricky balance in my view. So once we have the facilities and we've got the grant plus some money to pay for them, we need to have some, I haven't got any advice for you about how you go about that. We're going to need a script or something to be saying the fair and honest way of doing this, because some groups can pay and should pay. Some groups you can, so whatever is in the building when it's operational, you're going to need to revisit that as a strategic objective in my view. And the second one is really for the next council passing on, the nursery relocation will be the biggest project the next iteration of the council does. It will save money, revenue cost, but we're going to need to invest some money into money to get it there. So whoever's around next, you're going to need to keep a very solid eye on that in terms of progress, because once Rainbow Gardens is out of the way. And lastly, Dorset Council is the key to opening or unlocking, because where they go, other private money follows. You've got to somehow prove that we can deliver those services in the future when you've got the facilities. That would be my bit. But well done, well written report. I'm going to actually propose a report myself, as I've had some say in the writing of it. So agree that the primary focus of Cumberland should be centred around delivering social value outcomes to the community and more realistic income targets. So I will propose that. Can I have a second? Councillor Northern. All those in favour? Unanimous. Congratulations, Ben. I just have one question for the officers, which is, do we need to take that to full council? Because it doesn't say that in the recommendation.
Yeah, we will have to take it.
I've got a view myself. I mean, this committee can make decisions based on that. But everybody's happy. It doesn't say that. So unless any of the committee seriously want it, we're not intending to take it. I'm not. That's either way. Okay, as it stands. Thank you. Right, moving on, item 10 is Ben again. This is the sealed funding application from Tumbledown. Ben, would you like to kick us off and explain what this is?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this is a seal request. As we alluded to in the last item, we applied for money against building A at Tumbledown. And were successful in getting £100,000, but we needed 110,000 in total for the grant element of what we put together for the building. And the Dorset Council grant, although we applied for 25,000, only funded us 15. So it's to make up that shortfall, and that's one of the grant conditions with both of those grants we have got, that we show how that missing 10,000 is accounted for to be able to draw down their funding. And also there was another 10,000 within the makeup of the building, so the breakdown of some of the things that we want to put in the building to be able to make up that cost. So that's why it's 20,000 in its entirety. I think all the other parts we've either covered in the previous reports of what the building's going to be and who uses it. So it's more around us achieving the cost or the total funding to allow the building to happen. And that's why we're putting the seal request forward in 20,000.
So in my simple mind, you've got 115,000, 15 from Dorset, 100,000 from the grant.
No, sorry, it was 85,000 from what was Magnox, which is now the Nuclear Restoration Services, NRS, and 15 from Dorset Council,
Right.
which makes 100.
And the condition of that 100,000 is that we've got to show where the 20,000 comes from.
Yeah,
What happens if we don't not keep it to 20,000? Do we lose the 100?
then we wouldn't be able to draw down because we haven't achieved
Okay.
the full amount of funding. Yeah.
Okay, questions? John, Councillor Laurel, do you want to say something before we go to the committee?
I just fill in a bit there, and partly picking up what Councillor Norman said on the brief agenda item. I've had a real big on battle with Dorset Council on getting the funding. Picking on that government grants that are coming through, saying, come on guys, we're providing a service for you, give us some funding. And the answer I've had back several times, despite giving evidence of all the work we're doing, which Dorset Council walking away was, well, why should we give you our money when you're not spending your own still? Which I think that's the state of play. So in many ways, I'm allocating some of our films, we're not spending taxpayer, ratepayers' money, it's still money, so it's developers' money, but that will help unlock more funds for Dorset
I
Council.
should read the accounts because we only have 65,000 in that account.
Yes. Well, yes, it's good that we're spending it now.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. Okay. Questions from the committee? Any questions on this request? Do I have, Councillor Lambert?
It seems there's no questions, so I'd like to propose that the recommendation as shown.
Okay, so the recommendation is to recommend it for Councillor Legg.
Sorry, seconding.
Okay, I was going to read the recommendation on. To recommend to full council that 20,000 be allocated from the seal reserve to support the works to be undertaken in respect of building A at Tumbledown. That's the classroom and the toilets and the building itself. So this was proposed by Councillor Lambert, seconded by Councillor Legg. All those in favour? Thank you, committee. It's the Ben Heath show. Ben, item 10, Rallypole Park and Gardens kiosk. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So third go. This report is more around a change of the tender exercise to get somebody to actually run the kiosk once the project construction is finished at Rallypole Park Gardens. So we followed the tender process in its full scope using the Delta system and putting the full package together and put that out. Unfortunately, we didn't get anyone applying to put a full application forward to run the kiosk. We did have 3 download the information and obviously consider putting a tender forward, but none of them followed through to an actual tender. So I contacted the 3 and 2 come back. And one was an external outside of Dorset company that was saying park kiosks need a lot of local information and knowledge to be able to make them successful, and they're quite weather dependent if you haven't got a lot of that knowledge to know how and where to maximise the income to be able to run it. So that's why they didn't put a full tender forward once they've read the full spec. And the second was an organisation that works with people with additional needs that look for placements to be able to put learning opportunities through and, you know, put some social value back into running concessions and things where they can offer sort of work placements through their work with those range of people. So they are very much keen in terms of the kiosk and the park location. There was a number of things within the way the tender spec was put together that they felt was a bit constrictive, and they basically it was too much of an effort for them to go through everything that was required in the way it was required. But through the conversation I had with them, the actual amount in terms of rental value that we were looking for and the setting up the operation of the kiosk, they weren't fazed by that at all. And actually what the report is asking is the committee happy that we take a slight change of view in terms of who we might get to run the kiosk in a slightly different way, i.e. offering some placement opportunities with them working through with their users to be able to run the cafe in a slightly different way. But the actual value and the outcomes in terms of the income we were looking for would still remain as part of that process. So it's a delivery element that we're sort of asking to change.
Ben, sorry to put you on the spot. Can you just give me an example of how the full tender and the tender light, if you like, what would be a sort of big difference that would turn somebody on to the opportunity? I don't quite understand.
Yeah, so the within the full system, there's about 8 documents that make up the full package that they have to fill out, and they have to go through in a lot of detail and
like a council document.
yeah, a little bit, yeah. But in terms of some of the contracts and things or concessions that they've run in the past, they're not used to doing that side of tendering. And it was a similar information, but in a much simpler format and probably not quite as heavy in terms of them filling it out and putting across how and what they would do to run the kiosk. But it would obviously add a different element of social value to the kiosk operation rather than a straight commercial company running it. But also it would still create the same income we were looking for from the original tender.
Yeah, it was a condition of the lottery grant, wasn't it, the cafe? Am I right in saying it was?
Yeah, because of the big part, again, coming back to toilets with the facility, the toilets and the refreshment element was something that was missing, and the nearest place is quite a distance from where the park is. So it enables people and families to stay in the park and use the park for a lot longer.
And the income from the rent was to be used for maintenance of the park, is what I understand.
That's right, it has to go into a ring fenced pot for the park. Yeah.
And they're willing to pay that, or seemingly.
Yeah, the levels of income that we had in the original tender, I chatted all that through, and that was something that they were, not seeing as a way that they wouldn't tender, yeah.
Okay, Councillor Nicholson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. At previous meetings when this has been discussed, a number of members have raised concerns about the financial viability of this site. And one could evidence that on Saturday afternoon, some people are sitting on the beach and they're not necessarily at this cafe. What worries me about this is the financial viability of it. And while somebody might be prepared to take it on and say they're going to pay, the rent, I don't quite see how that squares with them paying the rent we want, and at the same time, it providing a sort of social value. What worries me is that they will find, they might well discover that, in fact, it isn't terribly viable. They might then decide to pull out, and I wonder what the fallback position on this is. Because clearly the financial viability of it is the thing that has attracted people to the main tender, and I can see why. And I'm just worried that the same thing could happen again with this group, much as it might be of social value. At the end of the day, somebody's got to provide the money for it. And I just wonder what the fallback position is going to be if, for instance, built that these people pull out.
That's what you said. So with any of our contracts, leases or licenses, there's always a risk. And what I would say is this is no different to any other lease or license we have. We have similar situations. We have one home at the moment, and we follow, as you know, our debt recovery. We're very strong debt recovery, and we follow the small leases and licenses in place. So if people don't pay, there's thing with this process that we follow. So I don't see that being an issue. And the amount that we've actually budgeted for, I think, is quite a realistic amount, and it was set 3 years ago and it hasn't increased. So actually, I think it's a safe option.
So can I come back? I mean, I don't have a problem with that, because clearly we have a proper debt recovery situation in place, and if people take the contract and they don't pay, we take appropriate action. What happens that obviously at the end of that contract term, and then they're no longer liable for it, if they pull out, what are they going to do then? Because clearly it's not attracting people from the main contract because they feel that it's not financially viable. So we're going to be in a situation where we may not lose money over the term of the contract because we can enforce that debt, but it does put us in a better position as to what we're going to do with the cafe if nobody's going to run it.
Well, Councillor Norton.
So I'm confused by what Councillor Dickinson has said, referring to a main contract as if this isn't the main contract. The main contract is to operate the cafe. So I don't understand what Councillor Dickinson was referring to.
What we're saying is that if I call it the main contract as opposed to contract light, we've put that out to tender, and effectively nobody has come back to tender on it. And my feeling probably is because they don't think it's financially viable. So we're going for contract light, if you like to call it that, which clearly it has some social value to it, which is quite noble. But if that isn't financially viable for them, what do we do if they decide to pull out? That's my point.
So as I understand it, from Ben, we're still asking for the same money for the lease. So it's not light in terms of money. If anything, it's plus, because we're getting some social benefit as well. That's not why we're doing it. We're doing it because it's a license let. And there isn't, to me, this is, yes, the person's willing to risk it. We should encourage them and we should support them as we support all our tenants in operating a new business. And it would be good for Radipole Park and Gardens to have not only the cafe, but the toilets that come, which they are not responsible for. Is that right?
The tenant is responsible for, yeah.
He is. Okay, well, that's good. Thank you.
Councillor Legg.
Yes, I'm not quite sure of the protocol we've got to follow here, because we've been out to an open tender, in effect, and got a zero response. And I just want to make sure that we can't be accused of favouring anybody if we go and make a deal with just one contractor. So I'd like some assurance on that.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Yeah, and we wouldn't go back to just one person with that. So you're right. We've done the open tender, no successful bids or no bids submitted. So we can now legitimately alter what we need to do within there to make it attractive to the type of group that we've got feedback from. But we wouldn't just go to one. So we would either target a number of organisations, which there are several locally that do similar sort of delivery, and either do a closed tender with them as a follow-up, or open that out but targeted around the type of changes that would make it attractive to them. So it wouldn't be just going back to just one that might have shown interest via one conversation.
If you're redesigning the contract or redesigning the tender offer, if you like, would you be approaching anybody that might be interested in it to see what they would like to see in that tender contract? I don't want you to go to one, agree a procedure you're going to follow, the rewording and whatever it is, and the simplification of the forms, and then just present that to the others without finding out that that's actually what they want, and maybe they want something different. I'm just trying to be equitable.
Yeah, no, that's 100%. So we will learn from what we've got back in terms of where there might have been some restrictions, or where organisations like that might see restrictions in the process. And anything we do will be open and transparent. So whatever feedback we get, we will make it open to everyone to obviously see that, apply to that. We've got a procurement consultant as well that can guide us on that. So in terms of anything we do, we always run that through to make sure that we're following all the correct legislation, if you like. But yeah, it's open and transparent.
Councillor Hamilton, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I am confused. On the agenda, the recommendation that we're being asked to consider is agree to change the Redpole Parking Gardens kiosk operator specification to appeal to organisations that deliver social value outcomes. That's what we're being asked to vote about.
Yes.
And the same agenda on page 16 gives members the reassurance that we're adapting the tender opportunity to simplify how it works, still following the council's financial regulations, to target suppliers that could operate the kiosk as a training opportunity. I imagine it's still going to be an open opportunity. And the value and responsibilities would not change, so the outcomes will remain the same. Now, so the only thing we're being asked about is just amending it, not narrowing down who we speak to, but just amending.
Yes.
That's okay. And I would like to say, because it's twice that it's been mentioned in this meeting tonight, in fact 3 times if you mention the conscience bit as well, but there's something called the Social Value Act, which says when we procure things, we have to think not just about strictly financial terms and decimal points, but we also have to secure wider social, economic and environmental benefits. That's incumbent on us. It's not an add-on. And it's actually what public service is about. So I see that I propose, actually, it hasn't already been proposed, but we accept this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. I'll come back to you. There's a couple of other people want to speak, and then I'll come back to your recommendation proposal. Sorry, Councillor Wakeling.
Thank you, Chair. Well, Councillor Hamilton has just made all the good points. Thank you, Lucy. There. I was going to say we've been asked just to amend it. I think Councillor Nicholson's concerns are a future issue. So that tonight we don't appear to have a lot of choice. The initial tender has not come back with results. Let's amend it and have another go. And if it comes back another time, then maybe we'll have to have a rethink. But I agree with everything Lucy's just said, and let's get on with it.
Be that phase, our procurement process is too damn complicated, and we need to simplify it, not just for this one, but for all of them. I'm joking. I'm not. Councillor Hamilton made a proposal. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wakeling. You've heard the recommendation 2 or 3 times. I won't read it again. All those in favour? All those against? And all those abstentions? Great. Item 11 is beach attraction licenses, and I'm going to ask the assistant town clerk to introduce. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Chair. And before you this evening, you have a report regarding the 4 seasonal attraction sites on Weymouth Beach. You may recall that over the last couple of years, we've issued 1-year licenses, and we're asking to do the same for the 2024 season. These summer licenses are an important source of income for the council and provide both entertainment and for families.
May I be excused from that one?
And visited to the town. I am currently drafting the secret master plan, which will be coming to ENS in January, and as part of that, it may be that we look at attraction sites for the future, and this is partly why I'm asking this evening if we can offer 1-year licenses.
Thank you, Charmaine. I had that as a question actually, but well, Councillor Dickinson's going to beat me to it, I think.
No, I was just wondering if the assistant town clerk has had any feedback from people that have the single licence, or whether they would actually prefer 3 to 5 year licenses?
So we had two operators, in the 2023 season. One of those operators operated 3 sites and the other operated 1, and they would both have longer term licenses, even 5 years minimum.
Good, just building on that question from Councillor Dickinson, just remind me as why it's a 1-year ask? Because of the Seafront Master Plan outcomes.
Because it may be that we decide to merge the sites, so you can have one larger site for attraction sites, 3, 4, and 5. So with Helter Skelter, the chair planes and the little
Will
roller,
become one site.
potentially that could be an option.
So this is just an extension of the current arrangement at the moment.
We would have to go out to an informal tender exercise.
No, in this ask is just an extension of the current situation. Yeah. Councillor Dickinson.
Yes, thank you. Can I just ask, in terms of these 1-year licenses, if we go forward with this, are we likely to put any of these existing people off because they want a longer license? I mean, I don't know if there's any terms of investment they have to make, but if they've only got 1 year, the possibility they might be terminated after that, then they're going to feel they don't want, don't want to do it at all.
You know, the operators that we've got are very keen to come back, and they've been knocking at the door, basically asking us to get this going as quickly as possible. So they would be happy with 1 year, but they do for the future require more sustainability.
Again, Councillor Harris, I'll wait.
Yeah, I think it's fairly clear that they would prefer to still be on the books, so that when we go over to our master plan that we are going to draw up for the seafront, then they're in there with a shout because they'll see what's coming. So I think that we should go along with the 1 year now on the understanding that we are actually going to be looking at the whole thing as part of our seafront master plan, and then there may be changes of that later.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. If I may, going back to the 1 year ask again, will the outcomes of the Seafront Master Plan be decided within the year? Otherwise, I don't want whoever's here next year asking for another 1 year, so you're absolutely certain that whatever the outcome of the Seafront Master Plan might be on site for 5 years, or whatever we end up doing.
So the Seafront Master Plan will be in January, full council February for adoption. And my plans would then be for in the spring, summer to then work on a longer tender process, so we're not sat you. So those people that are currently there potentially, if they are interested, they've got certainty and know as soon as possible rather than having to wait.
Thank you, that satisfies my questions. Any other further questions? So the officer recommendation is that this committee agrees to the council offer a single season licence for 24 for the 4 attraction sites on Way of the Beach, and gives the town clerk delegation authority to award the licences following a procurement process. I have a proposer, Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor Furman. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you, committee. Item 12 is the Youth Council standing orders, and it's the Assistant Town Clerk again.
Over the last 12 months, the Weymouth Town Council and Youth Council have been establishing themselves. We meet regularly on a Friday evening, third Friday of every month. At a recent Youth Council meeting with support of myself and also councillors that attend, we have drafted some standing orders. I think it's really important that we have standing orders so we can move the group forward, and they've got a basis to base their meetings around. The draft standing orders are Appendix G.
Very much. Questions? Any questions about the Youth Council? Councillor Furman, you're involved in the Youth Council. Would you like to say anything? Please.
I propose that we go ahead as recommended. I think just in general, the Youth Council have worked really hard to develop a process at which they can work at, which isn't obviously going to be the same as us, but it is very bespoke to them. They have loads of input into this with the good work of the Assistant Town Clerk in developing what could be, a really good ground zero for local politics. And it's really great to see what they're doing.
Thank you. Councillor Legg.
I'm a bit concerned that without asking a question, Councillor Furman's answered it.
That's good. I like the anticipation. Councillor Legg.
I think I know the answer, but the wording is just eluded me. I believe the membership of the Youth Council is young people who live or go to school within our boundaries with the addition of Budmouth students, because Budmouth is just outside our boundary. But there's exception, it says exception and they're not addition. Is that, my understanding is, yeah, that we don't exclude the student because they go to Budmouth. They might live just over the boundary and go to Budmouth, but their colleagues and their friends are all in the same circle.
Councillor Norman.
I just would like to commend the work that the youth council is doing and the enthusiasm they have for it. I've spoken to one or two individuals and I'm very encouraged. Thank you.
Do the youth council get involved in Tumbledown at all? Have they been up there or? Because it seems like a good thing to do, which is a suggestion that you can take away. Might be get their view on what Tumbledown is.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so
Something I was going to suggest, and myself and Ben spoke about, we went on a site visit to Tumbledown last week, was actually get the youth council up there for a meeting, so one of their Friday meetings held up there. And also would very much like to welcome our new members, our new councillors in Lane for a site visit to Tumbledown.
I was thinking.
So we need a building.
Okay, so the officer recommendation is that the committee agrees to recommend the adoption of the youth council standing orders to full council. Proposed by councillor Furman, seconded by councillor Wakeling. All those in favour? Unanimous. Okay, into the information items. I'm not going to take any questions unless they're really burning, but we've got information on grant applications. We didn't have any for this committee, so you've seen the detail of what's left in the grant pot. Redlands, that will come to the next full council, I think, and the forward plan. Not intending to take any questions unless there are any burning ones. At 8:13,